part of why we're here. How many people first town hall by a show of hands? Hands online or two? Okay, so a bunch of folks. Quick backdrop for what town hall is, why it is. Since the very early days of Indie Hall, we try to come together at least a few times a year to talk about sort of what's going on in the community, sort of reflect on things that have been happening recently, sort of snapshot where we are today, and look ahead. And sometimes these are just checkpoints, seeing how we're doing, seeing what we want to do more of, and we sort of draw from those ideas and inspiration to come up with new ideas for events, for improvements for the physical workspace, for improvements for how we work together online. Other times, town hall is a little less group brainstormy and a little more like a keynote, because we're talking sort of more about a turning point in Indie Hall. And today's one of those. And if you've been following along in the Slack or following me on Twitter the last couple of days, been a lot of noise around an article that I just published. With no expectations or dishonor, if the answer is no, is there anyone who has not seen the article that I'm talking about? Most of you. Excellent. So it's what's up here on the screen. And for those of you who are watching at home, you can find it at indiehall.org/10K. This is sort of something that's been, it's a lot of things really that have been rolling around in my head for almost 2 years that I've tried to write down and share many times and failed. And then something happened on Sunday afternoon and it finally all came out of my head at once. But part of the reason I'm excited to start this conversation at a town hall and make this sort of the beginning of what I hope is an ongoing conversation for the next many months and many years is, you know, we're about 2.5 years since we moved into this new location. And in the last like 6 to 9 months, I feel like some things have finally started to fall, started to feel like we're at home. I feel like we're starting to feel a bit more like ourselves, which is a great thing. But I also see it as an opportunity to start thinking about, well, what do we want to do with that now that we're sort of this better version of ourselves, both in this physical space, less distracted with just kind of figuring out how to be and looking to the future. And so the thing that kind of catalyzed a bunch of disconnected ideas from past town halls, from lots of one-on-one conversations in this community, just from like knowing what people are up to in their life and in their work. The thing that like sort of sparked everything to kind of click into focus for me was actually the Amazon HQ2, we'll call it an event, a couple of years ago that I think most of us know how that went. Philadelphia did not get an HQ2 from Amazon. I think that's a good thing. But in those conversations, and that whole event, I sort of realized that there's a number sort of inside that whole event that surprised me. And that number was 50,000 as a number of jobs that are apparently enough to make everyone lose their fucking mind. Where City Hall is willing to do backflips and city and state governments are willing to put together multi-billion-dollar incentive packages to lure a company that provides 50,000 jobs to a region. And the entire time I'm sitting here scratching my head and going, well, great, but I don't think that that's the best way to create 50,000 jobs. One company creating 50,000 jobs, jobs are good, by the way. I think that we can all agree that jobs are good. Jobs are good for the local economy. We need more jobs. We need more good paying jobs. We need more opportunities for more kinds of people. That means we need more training and pipeline. That also means we just need pure opportunities and companies to employ people. But one company employing 50,000 people, to me, seems like about the worst way to do it. And that one company being Amazon is the worst way to do it. That's a lot of power to wield for one company, and for that company to be Amazon and their track record makes my skin crawl. So people started asking, well, like what alternatives then do we have? And my brain sort of does this thing in business and in projects where I take big things and I break them down into smaller things. And I say, well, better than one company with 50,000 jobs, 5 companies creating 10,000 jobs would be better. Not great, but better than a single company being responsible for all. 10 companies creating 5,000 jobs, you know, so on and so forth. Kind of work that math backwards as the companies get smaller, but the number of companies gets larger. Because larger business communities, larger business ecosystems are just more resilient. And if you start running it down to the furthest end of the spectrum, where we have the potential to create 50,000 entrepreneurs, I'm not sure if that's the right answer either, because not everyone wants to be an entrepreneur. Not everyone should be an entrepreneur, for a lot of very good reasons. And because people still need jobs, period. So between that, understanding, and the conversations that I've had with folks in this community and our sort of family beyond the people who necessarily come here to work, and the things that are happening in people's careers and the things that people aspire towards. I think I've got somebody who's on the remote who's not muted. If you don't mind taking a second to just mute yourself. There are more people who could create a more sustainable job for themselves than do, right? I think a lot of people choose some version of independence, and some of those people end up here. People choose to freelance or consult or, you know, start a small business of their own. Some people find opportunities to work remote for other companies that allows them to be location independent. I still see that as a version of independence that has actually allowed more people to be a part of this community and start to thrive than ever before, which gets me really excited. And if we start to think about entrepreneurship less like what we see in the media and Forbes and Inc., and sort of what, you know, especially in technology, what people think of as entrepreneurship, where if I'm going to start a business, that means I'm planning to grow and employ hundreds or thousands of people. I think that there's lots more people who are cut out to create a business that is a sustainable, thriving job for themselves, even if they never ever hire another person, then there are people who would do the same thing with the actual capacity to hire tens or hundreds or thousands of people in the future. And so thinking about, now that we're in this physical space and we've kind of got some stuff online figured out, including this live streaming thing, maybe, we'll see. What do we want to work on? What can we work on? Sort of what is Indy Hall's North Star to work on together while we're doing our work, while we're achieving our own goals, building our own businesses, growing our own careers, whatever they may be? What is the sort of common thing we're working towards? And I started combining that question, what are we working on for the next 10 years, with this 50,000 jobs number, and sort of had the light bulb moment of what if we sort of plant a flag and say, there's another way to create 50,000 jobs. And it's by first helping 10,000 people become sustainably independent in your own definition of independent, by the way. That doesn't mean you need to go out and start a business. As I said, remote work, I believe, is absolutely a piece of this, but independence is something that I think is for each of us to define. And to make sort of the purpose of our community is, I think it's not changing the purpose. I think it's doubling down on the purpose of our community, which is to encourage and help one another to be the best independent versions of ourselves, right? So, so this crazy 8,000 word diatribe that fell out of my brain on Sunday, and then I spent the rest of the week refining with the help of lots of people sort of suggesting edits, outlines a much bigger plan, and a couple of pieces of that plan that I hope to start here at Indy Hall with all of you. And sort of in the second half of this town hall, I sort of want to hear from you what some of these kind of big and sometimes ephemeral ideas inspire for you, and sort of what resonates, what questions you still have, because this is not a, like, I didn't chisel this into stone or find it on a tablet on the top of a mountain. This is a collection of thoughts meant to frame both ideas and actions that we can take together. And so today's town hall, this evening's sort of duplicate for the evening crowd, are really just the very beginning of the what are we working on for the next 10 years based on these core concepts. So to break these core concepts down into sort of their two component parts, the first one is something that we already do kind of by accident, and I think we can do a lot more intentionally. And that's show more people the many ways that you can make a living doing all the things that we do. I've been part of Indie Hall for over a decade, and every week I meet somebody who's making a living doing something that I did not know you could make a living doing. And I'm still surprised, not surprised, but I'm like, if I can still learn of new ways to take a skill, take an idea, take a passion, take a connection or a relationship, and turn it into a career, or at least part of a career, and I see it literally every day, it's my job to see it. What about all the people who only ever see what their friends and family do for a living, what their parents and relatives do for a living, what's shown on the media as an option to do for a living? And those options are really limited for a lot of people. I had an amazing conversation with a woman yesterday who's starting a Montessori school in Northern Liberties, and part of her teaching plan, goal, model, I don't know what the best way to call it is to have students, high school students, before they're even in college, high schools, middle and high school students, see workplaces that are filled with people doing all different kinds of things in different ways, in different environments, in different styles. So these kids might know that there are more potential paths and have a better chance of choosing one that actually makes sense for them. I think those of us who are already in this room are super fortunate to have found, maybe they didn't find the thing, but we have found other people who are finding the thing, right? And I think there's so many more people beyond our walls, beyond our community, who have their own, even if they have in their head of a thing that they think they could do, they've never seen somebody else do it, so they're not even sure if it's possible. So between showing people new things that they did not know were possible and showing people things that they wish were possible actually are, I think there's the potential to inspire an entire new category of independence, not just entrepreneurs, so to speak, but people who intentionally choose their own work path. That can include freelancing and entrepreneurship. That can include a lot of different things. And by collecting those stories, by sharing the stories that we already have, but also thinking and being really intentional about reaching deep into the far-reaching corners of the city, the communities and organizations that are in a lot of ways mirrors and brothers and sisters of our community, but that look different from us, that have different lived experiences than us, and realize the things that we have in common and also the things that are distinctly different, but to make sure that the full spectrum of stories can be seen by the full spectrum of people, right? Not just what can be done, but who it's possible to be done by. I'm personally really inspired by that. I love inspiring other people to that. And so I think there's a million ways to get creative about collecting those stories and then telling those stories through our various interests and skills and audiences and relationships, and building new bridges into communities and building new relationships, and having this all be kind of flowing back and forth, whether it's through, dinners where people are telling stories in sort of an intimate setting, to one-on-one interviews that get recorded, written, audio, video, to signal boosting other people who are already doing these kinds of things into other communities that don't see those voices, don't see those energies, don't see those efforts. And in that phase, sort of building the profile of a category of entrepreneur or independent, I should say, that exists, but I don't think gets nearly enough airtime. And I think is largely representative of many of the people that already choose to be a part of this community. And all of these sort of mirror communities, all these brother and sister communities around the city and beyond that we could be more connected to because we do have these things in common. So that's sort of piece number one: telling stories, capturing stories, sharing stories, and doing it intentionally so that it's not just the same voices that always get airtime getting airtime. The second piece is through communities of practice. And this part, I don't want to say one part excites me more than the other, but this one might excite me a little bit more. Because how many people know what a community of practice is, or even have heard the term? A couple of people. So I like to sort of distinguish communities of practice as sort of a subset or adjacent set of communities of interest. Communities are people who come together for whatever the reason, and there's lots of different kinds. The most common communities you've probably been a part of are community of interest, people interested in a topic, people interested in an idea, in a project, in a kind of media, in a kind of story, whatever it is. Within those communities, there are often communities of practice. And the definition that I like is that it takes the people that are interested in that thing and has them actually working towards getting better at that thing in some way and doing it in some sort of collective fashion. So if you've ever been a part of like a group, like I'm thinking about like athletic, I'm thinking about, what am I trying to say? Like if you join a gym, like CrossFit, or you're part of a Aikido, right? You know, part of the reason people really get into some of these athletic communities isn't just because of the fitness, it's because of the sense of community around getting better at something, and everyone has a chance to help someone else get better and then get that in return from a peer. And in a lot of scenarios, those things can happen in professional settings too, in creative settings, to be able to get together on a regular basis with a group of artists and practice your art or music and all get better together, to get better at a technology, to get better at business. Communities of practice are all around us. They tend to be kind of accidental. And I think that's the thing, is we've had communities of practice exist within Indie Hall for a long time. They just tend to be accidental and kind of ephemeral. We lean really hard on serendipity, which requires you to be kind of in the room, physically or virtually, paying attention, know who to look to, know who to listen for, know who to ask, trust that it's okay to ask, trust that you won't interrupt somebody when you ask, and trust that you'll actually get the answer that you're looking for. That's a lot of barriers to even bother asking in the first place. And it's amazing that people do. And it's even more amazing that it works as often as it does. But by relying so heavily on serendipity, I think we're unlocking like just this tiny little fraction of the opportunity to build our practices together, our professional practices, our creative practices, our the various skills within them, without creating just a little bit of social infrastructure, technical infrastructure, build the tools, creating a door to walk through in the same way that Indie Hall is a physical door to walk through, so that you know that there are certain kinds of people that are going to be here. That's a part of why people come here. I'm thinking about communities of practice as a door to walk through without there needing to go to a physical building necessarily, because the beautiful thing about communities of practice is you can do them entirely online. The same way that we have Zoom running right now, you can get a dozen faces on a video chat screen for an hour and do a lot of the same kinds of things you can do around a dinner table. It's not exactly the same, but in the absence of the opportunity to physically be with other people, it's a very, very, very good second base, right? So communities of practice already happen, but if we create them more intentionally, and we make them sort of a clear path, a clear goal, a clear invitation. We make sure that they are led by and participated by people from that broad spectrum of experience and lifestyle and background and ethnicity and economic prosperity. Basically, having diversity built into these communities of practice from the start is going to make them richer and stronger. The whole that those communities of practice are a part of also gets richer and stronger. And I'm not just talking about the whole of Indie Hall, I'm talking about the whole of Philadelphia. And that's where like this gets kind of maybe too big. And we have to start small. But I genuinely see that if we frame things as big as helping 10,000 people become and stay independent, that we literally can involve people from across the city, organizations and communities from across the city, and easily, frankly, beat that 10,000 number over the course of 10 years by composing it of lots of small communities of practice, right? The last piece of this is how we go from 10,000 to 50,000, right? Because that was the number that I started with. And I've got an eye on the clock, and I want to really only talk for like another 5 minutes or so. before we start having some conversation. And I did just see a note about scrolling down on the doc. For anyone who's watching, you can go to the indiehall.org/10K link on your own computer and scroll around, check it out on your own for sure. So how do we go from 10,000 to 50,000 is kind of the big question. And if you think about the way I'm hoping we can reframe entrepreneurship as create a sustainable job for yourself, and that's the baseline for success. There are lots of people who will do that, can do that better than they are already doing that, and don't need to hire another person. SBA data suggests between 75 and 80% of businesses in America are one-person businesses. So that's interesting. So let's take that stat and say maybe 25%, let's be encouraging and say we do better than the average. 25% of those 10,000 people actually get to a point where they're like, you know what? I could do a better job. I could serve my customers better. I could serve more customers if I hired just one other person, just one. And we help them do that, right? If we help somebody actually put their economic oxygen mask on first, now they can help other people. If they choose, we can then teach them a more humane way of hiring. We've all been through hiring processes that are just brutal and horrible, and Marty has a whole podcast about it. It's that bad. So I think this candidate of 10,000 independents, and then a quarter of them being potential hirers, if they've been sort of brought up in a culture where it's not about grow as big as you can, grow as fast as you can, but instead a culture of business is about service and taking care of people, that translates directly into how you hire, who you hire, and how you grow a team. And if we've got people making their first hire from that point of view, the way they hire is going to change, who they hire is going to change, the opportunities that they create in the bigger Philadelphia ecosystem are going to change. And the people who hire one person statistically are far more likely to hire a second. And some people who hire two, not all, but some who hire two will eventually hire five. Some who hire five, not all, but some will eventually hire 10. Some will hire 50, some will hire 100, some will hire 1,000. And maybe, just because stats are fun, one of those 10,000 independents goes on to create their own 50,000 person company that's homegrown in Philadelphia. The cool thing is we don't need that one person, that one moonshot, that one, as I call it in this article, a Vegas odds opportunity. If you, and I will scroll down for a moment. Somewhere down here. Yep, it's in here somewhere. Down at the bottom, of course. So this graph is really stupid. As in, it's not an algorithm. This is like the dumbest version of this graph, and I have a couple of friends who have offered to dig through actual SBA data and look at what the spread actually looks like in terms of how many companies hire at what rate and at what size, and build this to be a bit more based on reality. But really, I just did this to show what's possible, not that this is what will happen. But with this spread of 7,500 independents only being independent ever, and then 1,000 of them eventually hiring 500 of them eventually hiring 10, 250, so on and so forth, where the biggest companies in here are only 250, 500, and 1,000 person companies, so still relatively small. That all adds up to almost 87,000 jobs. So we've already smashed through Amazon's 50,000 pretty easily. And again, that's without one of those companies becoming the moonshot 50,000 job homegrown success story. Not that that would be bad, but I think it would be a whole lot better to have our ecosystem diversified in that way. So, so that's how we hit that big number. The last thing that I'll say before turning this over to conversation is to talk about one of the very specific things that we're starting literally right now to the ends of that community of practice. And that's a new membership level that some of you probably heard about. We've been talking about it in announcements a lot. We've been talking about it in person with people. And we're calling them junto memberships. That is sort of our local indie hall flavor name for communities of practice that people can join. Our plan with junto communities are for them to be, one, online first, meaning to join one and participate in one, you do not need to physically come to Indie Hall. You don't need to physically go anywhere. If you are here, that's cool. You can jump into a Zoom room, maybe with other members that are part of that junto, but the goal is for the experience, the room you're joining is out on the internet, right? Your community of peers, your community of practice exists online first. We can get together offline, and I think we should. I think it's important, but I'd rather focus on getting together offline to build relationships, maybe have big dinners together and things like that. So the junto memberships are going to be a new membership level in the same way you can join Indie Hall as a co-working member. We have our community membership, which has always been kind of a social membership for creative professionals. This is a professional membership for creative professionals and beyond. The junto memberships are something that if you're come here to work or already part of the community, you can switch to or add on a junto, but also seeing this as an opportunity for people who have always thought, I love what Indie Hall is about, but I don't need a place to work. I'll join Indie Hall when I get that remote job, or when I leave my job to start my own company, or when I get hired by a company that works at Indie Hall. These are opportunities for people to start becoming a part of our community and grow themselves, and in doing so, grow together from the very start before they need to ever physically walk into this room. And of course, is a better way to serve our existing online community, which folks don't always realize actually makes up the majority of the Indie Hall community, is not here every day. And a very large percentage are basically almost never here and only interact with each other vis-a-vis the Indie Hall community online. So this is an improvement on top of that. We're launching with 3 juntos, an opportunity to together develop them, make them better, and then build more of them. The first 3, if you've been noticing some changes to our huddle room, recently renamed the green room, we've got a bunch of people recording podcasts here, and that's been happening over the last several months, but also just more people making really amazing podcasts in the city of Philadelphia. And everyone that I talk to who makes podcasts, whether they're as a marketing vehicle for their business or a creative pursuit, I said, do you know other people who make podcasts? And basically everybody said no. And I said, would you like to? And they said, that would be amazing. That would be a game changer. And I said, great, I have something for you. And so the Podcast Junto is the first community of practice for people who have their own shows and produce their own shows, as well as people who produce other people's shows, want to level up those shows, grow their audiences, improve their production skills. And ultimately, I see that as really valuable because they are a voice for Philadelphia. Those shows, if they're not about Philadelphia, that's fine. They're still voices of Philadelphia being shared far and beyond. And I think that has the potential to fit really beautifully into our storytelling goals of this bigger picture. The other 2 juntos that we're starting with, one is a freelancer junto or a solo consultant junto. For the folks who have a solo business practice. You may have some subcontractors here and there, but for the most part, it's you running your own business. And as many people know who come here, that is just really lonely and isolating and really difficult. You're gonna make mistakes. It would be really nice to have somebody tell you, hey, don't make that mistake. Or hey, if you make that mistake, here's how to fix it, right? We've all been through that, and I think many of us would love to help pay that forward because we've been helped by others. But there's so many people who are already here and who I think would be here, and not physically here, but I mean here in this mindset, and growing if they had that support structure to grow and practice together. And then the last junto, and then I promise I'm gonna shut up for a minute. I've been trying to figure out what to call for a while. I didn't want to call it an executive junto because while this group is technically executives, I don't think most of them actually call themselves a CEO. And I think they'd maybe grimace at the idea of being called an executive. I kind of settled on management and leadership because that's what it's about. It's like how to be a good manager, how to be a good leader, how to grow that team when you're beyond being solo. Because now you've got the business to run, and then you also have a team to run. And one of our friends, actually Adam's podcast co-host Octavius the other night suggested we should call it the Boss Junto. And I was like, that is exactly what we're going to call it. So the Podcast Junto, the Freelancers Junto, and the Boss Junto are the first 3 we're launching with. But in this document, I've outlined several more, and I think of the juntos more as a framework for communities of practice that can be refined, should be tailored to each community and the people in it, and most importantly, can be led by the people inside of it. And because this is a membership model, and that's how we support being able to continue doing these things, I'd also like to make it a thing where we can actually find leaders from within these communities of practice and invite them to step up and learn how to facilitate and lead these juntos, and actually pay them from revenue generated by junto membership dues. So that's a lot. And that last piece is something that that is already I've already spoken to lots of folks about, and every time I talk to somebody about it, they've got a new idea for it. So that is not a also not carved in stone, just like the rest of this plan. But that's sort of where my head is. And with the next 25 minutes or so, I'd love to ask you what you think. And just a quick qualify and to be considerate of the folks that are online, I'm going to turn on a handheld microphone that if you were in the audience is speaking, I'm going to ask that you use Adam if you wouldn't mind being my runner. And then I saw a couple of notes and comments in the chat room that I'm going to just grab first, and then we'll pass around the room. Sound good? All right. So one of the first notes from Salas that I think is really awesome is that Philadelphia has the second lowest broadband penetration rate of any major city. That's a barrier. It's also an opportunity, which you might have thought I was going to say. It's true though, and I think part of this is this sounds like a good idea, hopefully, but there's a lot of very real realities that I think we need to learn how to address and be honest about, and things like that are one of them. We can build these cool tools and say, yeah, you can get online from, you can join a junto from anywhere, but if you don't even have access to the internet without maybe going to a local library, or even then, or maybe you just don't know how because you've never had access to it. There's a whole foundation literacy component. This is where, and something I talk about a lot in this document, is the importance of collaborating with people who are already doing important work. A, signal boosting them as much as possible, and B, finding ways to overlap. So, I mean, if we're talking about large scale economic impact here to the kind that the city would do backflips for Amazon, and the members of the business community would get together, people who, by the way, do not play nicely together, would all agree to be in a video pitch to attract Amazon. I think that a pitch like this has the potential to light the fire under some asses at Comcast, at City Hall, some of the infrastructure and access related organizations, connect them with the people who can provide that access and say, we have a big goal, but if you guys don't play together, we're going to have a really hard time making this possible. And use concrete actions, not just, hey, everyone should have internet access, although that is absolutely positively true. But if we can use this as a way to motivate the people who can make the change, and maybe even make some of that ourselves, I think we've got a lot of, it's one of the many things, like meta projects that make this possible to succeed. Adriano, I think you had your hand up first.
First of all, I love all of this. I like that graph and all of the jobs that you can create. One thing that I don't know, it's probably on the doc, but one thing that it pops out for me that is very important is that the diversification of these jobs, right? 50, when you said like one company having 50,000 jobs is the worst, Amazon is the worst. The worst is that those are mainly unskilled jobs for uneducated, unspecialized people.
Yeah.
And what I think the junto will do and the sharing will do is would also help with education. Because I feel like when you see those numbers, right? The company that if I have to hire another person with me, they need to like kind of know how to do their, if it's like customer service, like you were saying, like you can't just like you need some sort of education. Like you try internship. Sometimes when people are starting, it's really hard, and that's why management is important to learn. It's really hard to get somebody on board and understand how to work with you. So I feel like those numbers, when you have a company that hires 1,000 people, I feel like the ones that hire less people need a higher level of preparation from the people who are working there. So what I like about this is this also helps, like generally, with educating and like raising like value and help everybody understand what their worth is, and have them work for what they're worth, and not just thinking their only option is to go to work for Amazon or drive Uber, or like they know that if they have a passion and talent, they can develop it, and these junto communities can help them.
Yeah, I think that's a really important observation, how much education plays into this at the full spectrum. And I agree that giant piles of low paying, low skilled jobs are one kind of problem. I'd also say all of those jobs being only high pay, high skilled jobs is also a problem. And so, to your point, a wide range of jobs with different levels of skill to train up so people can get in. I mean, I think part of this working is being really intentional about meeting people where they actually are, where not where we think they are or we think they should be. And again, working with and not duplicating the effort of other educational resources, other skilling resources, other career development resources. The city's full of people doing really good, really important work. If we, rather than duplicate that, maybe part of the role we play is coordinating that towards bigger shared goals that help them achieve the work they're already doing in a better way or in a more efficient way, or just to even know that it's working towards a bigger goal, maybe has the potential to help these organizations receive more funding because they're part of a bigger objective with concrete measurable goals. But yeah, education is a piece of this at the entire spectrum, and the diversity of the opportunities themselves, I'm really glad you brought that up.
Everybody to know that they can do what they love for a living, as opposed to I only have these three options.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Who else has got things that come to mind as we sort of talk through this and think through this? Yeah, Adam, you want to run a microphone over to Mike?
Who am I handing it to? Sorry for being so hard. Hello. So my question to you is this. I really like kind of how articulate you are about all this, and I think it's great how you're applying metrics to things so we can measure how things are moving. But I ask you, my feeling is such that we're at a point in time where the people that have not kind of stepped up have had the amount of resources to do such. And so I ask you, where is that point between, like, we're throwing resources at people that are just not willing to step up, or you really do need to decrease those barriers, right? Or those barriers like when we're eating lunch to talk to one another. Yeah, there's barriers, we articulate them very nicely. But like, can we really forego every barrier,
Yeah. So I think the answer to, are there people who have actual barriers that can be lowered and aren't doing it simply because they don't want to? The answer is absolutely positively yes. And I think the number is very, very large. And I've seen that number grow. The perspective that I have beyond Indie Hall itself and our own community are the growth rates and numbers that we've got in here, but also the other business that I run is one helping people who are generally in jobs, often high paid, high skilled jobs, but have really struggled to understand how to start a sustainable business. It's not that they don't know how to create things. They don't know how to sell. They don't know how to run the business side of things, or the only examples they've seen have set them up for failure in many ways. So yeah, I think there's a ton of low-hanging fruit in terms of simply inspiring people to see paths that they did not think were possible. Are there people who don't want this? Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why we need more people able to do it so that we can create those jobs. In terms of like removing all the barriers, I don't see that as the goal. I think it's just like chipping away at them one at a time. And I think that there are some that are unnecessary to exist barriers in 2019, based on the resources that we have, the reality that we live in, the tools that we have. And I know firsthand that there's a large percentage of people that we already have access to without even reaching intentionally beyond our own walls, who, based on one-on-one conversations, my own observation of how people run their practices, run their businesses, run their skills, how they interact, small knobs to turn to create lots of both prosperity, lots of a reduction of stress, and therefore increased prosperity, as well as the ability to pay that forward. Yes, 100%, 1,000%. There's this is not throwing resources at people who have already been provided resources. This is a layer of resources that I think most people don't even see because they've never seen it in a way that made sense to them. So,
Thank you.
Yeah, Zach.
So both of my questions actually were built on top of the previous two questions, which were both excellent. So as an economics buff, realistically, like where I see a lot of the value of this being added is actually creating upward mobility for a lot of people. And so realistically speaking, if, I don't know, I'm an engineer at Comcast and I'm making $100,000 a year, if I then go independent and have the opportunity to even double my income, that's not going to actually have a huge impact on my quality of life. But if I was, I don't know, a fast food worker and I wanted to figure out a way to actually do this, that is where a lot of economic value and upward mobility is actually created. And I think what I've seen in a lot of people is like, obviously, to an extent, people want to move up in life, but they don't have a clear path. And so I think what you were saying is there's a lot of different ways that someone can work independently and kind of figuring out a way to nurture people into that path of, you know, how do you discover what is the thing that you want to do, or if this is something you want to do, how do you do it? Because, you know, if you're making minimum wage, it's really hard and super risky to then go out on your own, or
Right.
not feasible at all. And how do we create ecosystems for people to actually take this path and thrive?
Yeah, well said. I don't have a lot to add. Real quick, I've got, I think somebody who just signed into the video might have your microphone unmuted. So if you wouldn't mind checking and please muting, because we've got a lot of background noise coming from you. And I see Kevin Seidman has a hand up as well. So Kevin, if you want to speak into the Zoom, I'll be able to hear you, and so will everybody online. And then we'll be awkward here in the room for a minute, and I'll try to relay what Kevin said.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Kevin.
Awesome, great. So of course I'm loving everything that you're saying, and my question is, are the Junto memberships kind of your initial tool to start creating these jobs? Because you've talked about how there's jobs to be created, but the document doesn't talk too much about how to actually create them. And I think the Junto memberships is where you're getting at. And I was curious if that was the initial tool, or if you haven't quite figured that out yet. And additionally, you may not have this answered either. How do you plan to track the amount of jobs that you've created over the years through this plan?
Yep. Great. All right. So for the room, we'll have this figured out for the future. Kevin's question was two parts. One is talk about creating the jobs, but there's not a whole lot in here specifically about how. And he was asking if the Juntos are effectively that first tool, how does that play in? That was question number one. And then question number two is about tracking this data over time. I'll answer the second question first, because I think it's a little bit easier for me to say I don't entirely know. But I also don't want to duplicate efforts. I think looking to other people who already track economic data and making sure that some of these results are being shared inward, maybe from other groups who track specific communities, specific industries, and things like that, is a starting point, in addition to tracking some of our own. Where's the handheld microphone, by the way? Can you turn it off real quick? I'm getting a little echo. Thank you. Beyond that, I think coming up with criteria for exactly what we're tracking, how we're tracking it, is going to be a collaborative effort. Again, to not duplicate what's already being done, but to also start tracking things that are not currently being tracked. One of the biggest challenges that I think independents face, actually several of them, track back to the fact that city and state do a really terrible job of tracking the independent business community. They track W-2 jobs out the wazoo, but they don't really look at, and it's not that they don't know that they exist, but if you look at all the incentive packages, all the programs are geared towards businesses that create lots of jobs, and that's great. but we're missing what the career creating from and social practices and their businesses growing and things like that. So there's a lot still left to track that we need to figure out what those things are. And one of the places that I hope to start is actually at a state level, trying to understand what the state needs to know in order to start recognizing independent workers as first-class citizens in our state, because we're not. I've still got somebody who's got a microphone unmuted. If you don't mind muting that real quick, please. Thank you. So I think tracking stats that actually can turn into something is important. To the original question about like, how do we actually create the jobs? In a lot of things we talk about in this document is about starting by creating a job for yourself. And a lot of people do work for money, for clients, for customers, but there's a level of sustainability that a lot of people don't get a chance to reach. And that is what I would like to decide, like help define what that is. And I don't think it's a single number. And I don't think it's the same for everybody, because people have families, or they have health issues, or they have all kinds of other reasons why their economic baseline is different. But establishing what those are and using the juntos to help people achieve a level of independent employment, a job for themselves, is stage one for job creation. And that's, as Kevin sort of alluded to in his question, is precisely what I see the juntos as being for. People will become people will be able to create better jobs for themselves by sort of unlocking this level where people hit this sort of ceiling and they survive, but they don't quite thrive. Juntos are intended to help people thrive. And then in terms of the larger scale job creation, I think that's where we start getting into a lot of the things that people need to learn in order to create jobs are on this hiring, management, potentially even things like fundraising, depending on what the business looks like. There's an entire other set of learning and training that, again, is being done throughout the city, just not, I think, coordinated or for this early stage, not even early stage. That's not a good way to describe it, but for this independent group, the people who go, I built a business, a job for myself, and now I'm ready to create jobs for other people. That category is big, and a lot of people just kind of throw themselves into it haphazardly. Some figure it out by luck, some figure it out by having good mentors. A lot of people simply don't have access to other people who have done it, which is the same core problem that we're talking about over and over. So those are sort of the key tools, but they are by no means exclusive. And again, there are other people doing related work in other communities that I think belong being a part of these goals. Even simply coordinating a little bit better, I think can elevate everyone's pre-existing work. Dave Walk has a question / comment, and then a question from Katie online. So Dave, you want to go first and then Katie?
Okay, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Cool. Okay, so good stuff. Something I thought of, I didn't read the whole thing, but I Control F healthcare.
Yes.
And as you say, if healthcare was, healthcare is a concern, right? Like people stay in their jobs because they need healthcare, they have pre-existing conditions. I think overall, if healthcare was disconnected from employment, you'd see a lot of people starting their own things, being more open to trying their own things, more independence. So I'm wondering, because healthcare is like this huge problem, if you can your effort can be folded into something, which is another effort going on of like Medicare for all, which is possible, depending on who, gets voted in a few years. It's absolutely possible. And I think that, instead of you having to try to tackle the healthcare problem, it's, I wonder what you think about that. And
Sure. So Dave's comment and question is around the topic of healthcare. And that is, and I'm going to paraphrase and put a few words in your mouth that I hope you don't mind, Dave. I'd say healthcare is the number one reason, if not maybe the number two, but I'd argue the number one reason that people that are otherwise marginally independent go back to get a job. Rising costs are increasingly difficult. What we get for that money is garbage. And at Dave's point, it being tied to healthcare being tied to employment is like this systemic issue that may not be our issue to solve, but if we can roll this work into helping other people solve it, is that possible? I think the answer is yes. I'm happy to say I don't know what I don't know there. But I absolutely see that by having coordinated voices and large numbers, that's where change happens. The freelancers union in New York City, for instance, while what they're able to provide is only a little bit better than what you can get outside of their program, they were able to use large numbers of, frankly, just email subscribers to then lobby for New York City, I believe. I don't think it's New York State, New York City level legislature that allows for group plans, association style plans. But that's a large pool of people, and just for one city, that should match sort of what we're talking about here. I also heard, and this is entirely rumor and speculation, so I'm going to go on the record and say I don't know how true any of this is, but I've heard that there are conversations at the federal level about bringing back association plans, which existed up until the 90s, and then frankly is a big part of how the Chamber of Commerce grew, was people would join the Chamber of Commerce because you could get on the Chamber of Commerce's association healthcare pool. They were outlawed in the 90s for reasons. And there is, again, rumor that there are federal conversation about being able to allow them again, but it would be up to states to decide whether or not they're allowed at a state level. So when I talk about aggregating numbers here, I also think it's important to be collecting those numbers into what matters at a state level, because that's one of the things that we have the potential to say, there's 10,000 independents that we're keeping track of in Philadelphia, but across the state of Pennsylvania, there's 150,000 people who, represent a pool of people who can't get healthcare. And if you made it possible for us to build modern association plans legally, you'd have an entire economic engine of people who would both become and stay independent. So yes, lots of opportunity there. I've got Katie, and then I've got Jess, and then we're just a few minutes away from the end of the hour, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. This is the beginning of a conversation. It's something we always say at Town Hall. Anaya has been jotting down some notes of comments and questions in addition to some of the bigger themes. So we're going to capture that, share that, but don't feel like this is the last opportunity to talk to me, talk to us. Adam and Anaya are, think of the three of us as a collective set of eyes and ears to share ideas, questions, concerns. And we'll kind of try and fold all and reflect all of that back to the bigger community. And I'll also say, please talk amongst yourselves and bounce ideas around, and then just make sure that the good stuff comes back to us. And it doesn't mean to be good ideas, but it can also mean good problems, good challenges, good concerns. That's stuff we want to hear as well. So Katie had a question online.
And Katie's question is about Junto memberships, and specifically whether or not there is a plan for development or programming Juntos.
Yeah. Very good question. And the answer is yes, there is a plan. And there are a couple of core components. The first one is sort of a tight-knit, almost like a group coaching kind of format that we've been using with a community of practice that we run for fellow co-working space operators, owner-operator and staff. It's worked really well. And we sort of refined over the last couple of years. So that's one piece of it. And that gives everyone an opportunity to be in a group setting, a trusted, safe group setting, ask hard questions, and sort of get support in a very limited amount of time. It assumes you're busy. It assumes that you need help. And then in between, so there's the sort of group coaching sessions, some sort of co-working sessions that may not even be physical coming to Indy Hall co-working sessions, but online co-working sessions. I'm going to be working on a project during this period of time, and I'm looking for accountability. I'm looking for knowing that if we're all working together, I can turn to somebody and ask for a piece of advice, things like that. Maybe it's like a proposal night or something along those lines. Not like wedding proposal, like business proposal. Just to be, why not both? So there's that. A show and tell component, I imagine, sort of taking our tried and true show and tell, something that's sort of based around demos and teaching, and giving both people within that community as well as bringing in outside experts to teach skills, inspire, and those kinds of things, and making sure that these members and leaders are all coming from sort of different backgrounds, not just the same people talking to the same people about the same things all the time. And then the last piece of programming that I have in my mind is something possibly once a quarter, maybe more often, where we're doing a big group dinner, that if people can, locate themselves into Center City. Maybe we rent out an office, a restaurant or parts of a restaurant, or maybe we do big like home dinners or something here at Indy Hall where members of juntos get together face to face, not just your own junto, but the other juntos, and really focus more on the personal bonds in those experiences, sort of in between the online stuff. There's other components to it online. We can show more detail, but I will also add, those are just tools that we've built, that we've used, that have worked. They will not work for every junto, and each junto, I think, has the opportunity to be tweaked and modified and tailored to and by the people that are in it. And so if people are interested in that kind of programming and leadership of what actually happens inside these juntos, that's a lot of valuable conversation to be had, and we're super open to having that.
I just want to clarify. I think Katie was asking a question about coding, programmers. I think, although I think we've also answered another question which might have come up as well.
Sure. Yes, technical juntos for certain programming languages. I don't see why not. I would say the answer to is there going to be X kind of junto is yes, there can be. And like everything else, we're going to build juntos community first. If there are a group of people who want to learn a thing and don't want to learn it by themselves, we'll figure out a way to build a community of practice around that. What I don't want to do is simply have an expert say, I would like to lead a community of practice on this. And then our job is to go find people that care about that. That seems backwards to me. But looking for people who want to learn a skill, get better at a skill, get better at a particular practice. By the way, this doesn't need to be just technology and creative stuff or business stuff. It can be other things too. I think once we've got a structure hashed out, the things it can be used for, think about it like a scaffold or a framework. It can really kind of be anything. Sorry for misanswering the question, but hopefully providing a little bit more. And then Jess, you had a question. Adam, you want to bring along the microphone?
I don't know. This was just going back to the point you were saying about the healthcare and the community and all that. I'm pretty sure the freelance is here too, just smaller.
It's complicated.
Yeah. Because I was just saying, I know for me, I am 100% that person that I would leave my job and go back to independence if it wasn't for the healthcare. And I hate that that's an option, like a thing. And I was wondering, when we're doing this and we're building this and the numbers, are they an organization that's worth partnering with to kind of propel their numbers to advocate for us as well on larger levels, because that's their whole purpose, or to a point where actually you can offer healthcare. But is this something that maybe our efforts can combine with their efforts to kind of make it at least fun to fill it up for the region to start with, and go from there?
I mean, the short answer to that is probably yes, almost definitely yes. I know that there are people that are working on this. I've had some really great conversations with folks who are advisors to various different city council members, who are like way more versed in policy and law, because it's one of those weird things where it's a legal thing. And so, but I think to your point, knowing who to talk to, knowing who is actually interested in these topics and being able to show up with real numbers is what the Freelancers Union did, and what I believe we can borrow from the Freelancers Union model. These are the kinds of things that start local and state. And the conversations I've had have been promising. Like, I have yet to meet a person at the policy level who said, impossible. That kind of surprised me, if I'm totally honest. They're like, no, anything's possible within this realm. It might be difficult, it might take time. I don't think it's the first thing we can do. I think it's a early outcome of the things we need to do to unlock all of the other phases and opportunities, though. So it's, I think, a very early conversation. I would not be surprised if, as this develops more over the next few weeks, if that becomes the leading conversation, leading question. I would like that to be true, if for no other reason, it gives me a very specific torch to hold and walk up to those people and say, we suggested this thing and everybody loves it, but they all have one question. And it's, how do we solve this? And if, again, we tie that to a large scale economic impact, I think we have a better chance of getting that support, as well as supporting other people, to your point, who are already doing this. Yes, that's a long way of saying yes. Really, really good. That's it for our noon town hall. I'm around all afternoon. Tip your waitresses. thank you to everyone who came here. Thank you to everyone who tuned in online. I would love, notes and comments on the online experience. There's a couple things we know we want to make better in general, but overall, how did that go? There will also be a recording of this. I believe Zoom will spit out in about an hour. And we'll be back here at 5 o'clock for sort of a repeat for the folks who are not able to attend this one live. Again, the goal is for this to start a conversation. So if you had ideas rolling around that you're not really sure how to formulate into words yet, or you weren't super comfortable grabbing a microphone, that's totally cool. We can go grab a coffee or a beer, or we can go grab a huddle room, talk one-on-one. We can talk in small groups, talk amongst yourselves. This is meant to be the beginning, not the answers. So I thank you for taking the time. I'm incredibly excited about this, what this can become, what we can build together, and working on this with all of you for the next many years to come. So thanks.